Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
Hello, and you are very welcome to this week's episode of Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. I'm your host, Aisling O'Rourke, and I hope you are safe and well as you tune in this week. Well, we've got an interesting show, I think, lined up for you. A little bit later on, we're going to be checking in with the Chunk Couture creators who have been creating items of fashion and clothing out of what would have been considered previously junk. And now that we have had our first, unfortunately only the first, but now that we've had our first cold snap of the season, it's time that we think about birds and whether or not we should be putting food out for them. I'll be joined a little bit later by Niall Hatch of Birdwatch Ireland to give us all those tips and tricks, because I know sometimes we can try to do the right thing but give out the wrong food, and that in itself can do harm, and we don't want to do that. But first things first, well, media pages, online, in print, on air, everybody has been talking about this housing plan the government has released. The latest housing plan from a series of governments aiming to tackle our housing crisis. And if you delved into it, you might see this acronym a couple of dozen times, I think, MMC. Modern Methods of Construction. Well, to tease out what exactly that means, I'm delighted to be joined now by John Kelly of Mount Lucas Construction and Training Centre. John, you are very welcome to the programme.
Thanks a million for having us on again, Aisling. Much appreciated.
Now, first things first, John, what exactly is a modern method of construction, this MMC acronym? Can you explain it to us for those of us who are not in the construction industry?
Yeah, I suppose, look, MMC is the new acronym that's out there. What it really means is it is what it says. It's modern methods of construction. I suppose the only confusion thing for people is people are assuming it's brand new and it's completely different, but it's not. I suppose it's been around for a good while in different areas. But I suppose from our perspective, when we talk about modern methods of construction, it's how we can build homes and apartments and retail units and all these kind of construction-related infrastructure quicker, safer, more energy efficient, but more importantly includes the likes of off-site manufacturing of building houses and 2D or 3D panelized systems in a factory, and then bring them onto site when the enabling works are complete and they arrive on the back of a lorry, either 2D panels or 3D volumetric units, and they can literally be craned in on site in a much quicker time. It means that rather than, because there's a fear out there that we're going to displace workers, we're not actually. What we'll end up doing is we'll be able to build more housing on scale because we have a huge housing crisis. And I suppose the big thing in Housing for All update is that MMC is mentioned in it 81 times. So that just goes to show there's a huge will and an emphasis on trying to build houses and apartment blocks and units on scale, en masse, more efficiently. But at least from our perspective, from a building regulations perspective, the standard of units that will be built will be a much higher standard, better energy rating, and building performance will be much better than houses that, say, were built 20, 30 years ago even.
And like I know from speaking with yourself over the years and others in the industry as well, that this factory method of building a house, as opposed to the traditional method of block by block on the site, there's also the environmental benefit of it because it's made in a factory. There's less waste because everything is so finely measured out and accounted for, and you're building en masse as opposed to one-off dwellings.
Yeah, and definitely, because like I suppose one thing that we're doing in the National Construction Training Campus in Mount Lucas is we're trying to educate young people in schools. We're at full employment for a number of years and the construction sector is crying out for people. So we're trying to target females and young people that don't come from construction or agriculture related backgrounds. So we have 2 mobile rigs on the road, and in one of the rigs it's in partnership with Kern Homes, and what we do is we go into schools and bring out TY students in particular into a rig, and we have all the trades on site inside in the rig, so they get to see electrical, carpentry and joinery, plumbing, electrical, all those kind of things on one rig. And what we're trying to do is show what new modern method of construction looks like, as well as tying it to the existing trades. So if we look at, say, a simple one, carpentry and joinery, what used to happen on a one-off house would a lorry would arrive with a bale of timber and then they cut the roof there and then. So it'd be much more labor intensive and would take longer, but that's the way it was done. Whereas now what's happening in these big manufacturing units is there's a production line, and all the houses, the 2D panels are built en masse in a production line with they're sent from the printing table upstairs in the design team and engineers and draftspeople downstairs, and effectively if someone or a number of people working on production line printing off these, and they're not only are they putting the timber together, but they're insulating them, they're air tightening them, and they're doing all the things that, so when they arrive on site they literally just click and play. And I suppose what we're doing in Mount Lucas, particularly in the MMC space, we're home to Ireland's first ever MMC demonstration park. So that's going to be huge for the Midlands, but more importantly for the whole country, that we'll have a single site where multiple typologies of different systems of MMC. So we'll have light gauge steel, we'll have timber frame, we'll have modular, we'll have insulated concrete formwork. They'll all be on a single site where planners, surveyors, architects, engineers, and building contractors that are maybe looking at systems that can improve their margin can come and see how they work. And again, it's tied in with universities in relation to the R&D side of the house, so that they will actually look at comparative analysis on the different typologies that are there. They'll stay in the houses, they'll do a building performance, energy rating, all these things. So it'll be an educational tool for the third level, but more importantly for us, we'll be able to train up the skilled people that are there, supervisors and the like, but also attract new people into the industry and train them up from new entrants.
And like as you say, we do need more people working in construction if we're going to tackle the housing crisis. And I know there in recent days, when there was conversations in national media around the Dublin Metro, there was a suggestion that as part of the Dublin Metro that we've been promised now for, I think it's 25 years, that we will need 8,000 skilled workers in order to make that one project successful. That's the level of construction worker that we need. But then they need to be housed somewhere. And there was the suggestion in the piece that I heard was that you might have something akin to an Olympic village built using these MMC models that could then, after, say, for example, the Dublin Metro is built, that could then be turned into student accommodation, or, that these new methods will allow us to do things at a much more efficient level.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose in Mount Lucas, what we'll be doing, obviously with the demonstration park, we have to accompany that with the relevant training. So it's great to have an exemplar flagship site that will house all these things, but that's only the first part of the jigsaw. The most important part is training up and upskilling people. So on site we'll have what's called on-site assembly training. So we will actually use the tower crane that we have on site, and we will train people up to make sure that they're installing these systems on site efficiently, but correctly, also to make sure that there's no on-site issues or delays or snags or anything like that. But the idea is we will assemble them and then we'll disassemble them. So I suppose the modular gives you that option. Like if you build tradition type builds, they're designed, especially in a one-off scenario, they're designed to go up and that's it. Whereas with modular, there is the option to move them from one area to another. So in the likes of the Metro, or obviously the biggest infrastructure project that the island has ever seen, there will be a huge influx of people to try build that, and they will need to be housed and homed and things like that. So I suppose it's MMC is about thinking differently. It's about working more efficiently and seeing how we can do more with either the same amount of people or less people in some cases, so that that'll enable them to move on to other sites. because like in Ireland now, there's a couple of sites in Ireland that are huge. There's one Cairn Homes are working on in Seven Mills up near Lucan in Dublin, and it's 7,500. It's a mixed development of apartment and semi-detached housing and a whole load of different things. But we need about 5 or 6 of those infrastructure projects in the country every year to try meet the housing targets that are there. And I suppose that idea of multiple systems on a single site, but being able to build them in factories and then bring them to site, it means that, and it also opens up the door. Like Glenveigh have a huge, they've taken over the old Braun factory in Carlow, and now they've turned into a production line. And what it means is you can be working in construction, but living 5 minutes away from your place of work, because you're now working in a factory, but you're actually, so it's opened up a new option for people that maybe don't, if they have small kids or family, they don't want to work 60 miles away from their house or have to stay over during the week. If they want to work in construction, they can potentially do that now in a manufacturing vicinity, and that's what the likes of the Glenveigh building is doing down there. And they are producing houses both in timber frame and light gauge steel. So they actually have 2 production lines, which it gives variety of work for the people there as well.
Talk to me then about standards, because I think there's always been, like, since even the development of wood framed houses, when they came into the country in, say, the late 90s, early 90s, we can sometimes be a little bit slow to change, to accept new methods of doing things in the country. And I do think there still is some concern around longevity of these buildings. And, I would hear a lot, but you'll only get such and such a warranty on that house. Now, I don't know any block built house that comes with a warranty, because, but this is a concern that people have. How safe and secure are they?
Yeah, and I suppose when you hear of 3D volumetric units, effectively they're prefabricated, and Ireland has a huge problem with the word prefab, because we think of prefabs that came into schools and all the rest, and it's not comparing like with like. So these new houses that are built up to passive standard. They can be built to A-rated. There's a site up in Dublin it's one of the first in Europe, has gone for full passive standard, which means it's as efficient as possible in relation to heat retention, in relation to carbon. All those kind of things are factored in. But the one thing MMC allows us to do is build them to the highest standard. All of the new modern methods of construction comply with building regulations. So the building regulations that changed in 2019 improve the quality of life and living for people in relation to ventilation, in relation to heat retention, all these kind of things. So they do comply. The big thing that sticks out in people's mind is when they hear of these things, they think of, the horror stories of the prefabs that went into the schools in the 80s and were still there 25 years later. They weren't designed to be warm and comfortable living spaces. They were designed to be temporary accommodation style, whereas MMC modular units that look in relation to the same principle, that they're a 3D unit that arrives on site, are much different. They're airtight, their heat, their energy performance is to the highest level, and the standard is down to what the builder wants. So some builders will be happy enough with comply with the minimum B2 rated, and some will push for A standard, and even in some cases they go for passive. So the option is there, and there's no fear around them. Like Ireland is slower to move to, and I suppose move with the times. Like what we're building now, or with MMC, will be building what's been built in Scandinavia and Nordic countries for the last 50 years. So it's not as if it's brand new. It's new to Ireland, but it's not a new system, and they've been tried and tested, and they comply with all building regulations. So they're as safe as houses, pardon the pun, but they are definitely designed to last. And like you said, in relation to any type of house, like 20-year guarantee, 25-year warranty, that's kind of the standard that you'll get from any building contractor that builds a one-off house. These houses are it's very hard to test something for 100 years plus, but these are meeting all the criteria that they should be able to come with, 50, 60 years, no problem. It's just, again, it's new to Ireland. And but if we want to get away from the big problem of a housing crisis, the only way to do this is by building differently, and modern methods of construction allows us to do that.
Does it include, John? Now, I know you're on the side of things where you're training those in construction to get upskilled in these new methods. But a fear that I would hear expressed a lot, like anecdotally, around these new housing developments, is that we're not taking into consideration amenities for families, green spaces, maybe playgrounds. Does this method of construction take that into consideration? Because if you want to have, a new community, you want them to be able to be outdoors, enjoy fresh air, have something to do in order to prevent things down the line like antisocial behaviour where there's nothing for maybe the teenagers in the community to do. Does that play a part in this new way of doing things? Because you go to places in Europe where they do have all of these modular buildings, or you go to Scandinavia and you see these amazing amenities in parks for youngsters and children. So I'm just wondering how much of that comes into this new way of looking at things.
Yeah, well, I suppose the MMC relates to the actual construction of the buildings as opposed to the areas outside. That'd be more down to the planning and in relation to. But what I'd say is, just on what we're seeing, engaging with the industry, is that these kind of large scale developments I suppose they allow for different types of people, different types of living, whether it's, like I said earlier, the idea of a high-rise apartment style or semi-detached, but they're designed to build, like that 6 mil or 7 mil site up in Dublin actually has the new Kishog railway line service station on it. It's that big that Clondalk and Fonthill is one end and Kishog is the other end. So that'll just give you kind of the scale of it. But within that, there's ample amount of green space. But again, that would be down to the planning side of things, as opposed to the methods of construction is really how you build and construct the units, as opposed to the living space. That would be more down to on the planning side of things.
And John, like we touched on it earlier on, like we need more construction workers to have all of these skills. So how are those who are working in the industry adapting? Because it's not easy if you've been working in a particular way for 20 or 30 years and now all of a sudden you need to go back to school and learn how to do things differently. So what is the response to the training that you offer at Mount Lucas now that you've been up and running for a couple of years?
Yeah, well, I suppose, Aisling, we work very closely with SkillNet, and there's so SkillNet obviously do lots of different types of training, but there's actually SkillNet MMC Accelerate website our platform was launched in conjunction with ourselves, and we had Minister Lawless from DFIRST was on site. And I suppose what we're trying to do is have a single repository there that will tell you all the options that are available. In relation to the training we've been completing over the last 18 months, particularly around, the areas of nearly zero energy buildings, zero emission buildings, and MMC. I suppose it's slow and steady because the industry, it's new to the industry. Once the companies, we deal mostly with employed people and upskilling in particular. Once they do the courses, they see the benefits of it. And at the end of the day, the construction sector is moving in this way. So we are getting a lot of very positive feedback in relation to the training that's available, the different types of training, because it's designed for all levels. So it's not a case of, just the guys and girls that are practical or that are on the trades. There is upskilling opportunities there, but also the people that are in the architect side of the house or the engineers or the surveyors, there's training there. And I suppose one course that we offer that's really kind of like almost a requirement is MMC Essentials. And what that does is gives you an overlay or an outline exactly what's involved in it. And once you do that, then I suppose there's other options available to kind of move or progress on from there. But what we're doing a lot of work is in the schools and trying to attract new people into the industry. We've increased female participation on campus from less than 1% in 2020 to over 13% in 2024 and 15% in 2025 so far, year to date. So that's a whole new target audience. And I suppose that's what MMC, along with digital construction, allows us to do, is to attract new people into the industry, because again, we're at unemployment levels unheard of for less than 4% for a number of years in a row. So we can't easily access people. So the best place to start is with our own Indigenous kids and that are going through the second level, and as they're going to the senior cycle, if we can open the door to a career construction, it's going down really well. And in particular, female participation on the rigs that we have in the schools, they're loving it. And it's just simply because they were afraid that construction isn't for girls. girls, whereas construction is for everybody. And there's an option there, and it's broad enough that there's different opportunities there available. And I suppose we work very closely with the department in building a documentary piece that's going out live on Virgin Media Sunday, November 30th at 1 p.m. And that's called Construction Tomorrow, Building Differently. And again, it's about education and information, and no more than the conversation we were having this evening. If people listening in kind of get an appreciation of what MMC is, because it's just an acronym, but in reality, it's how we can do things differently. So, like whether it's a simple house that has a roof truss craned in as opposed to a cut roof, it's simple things like that. The construction of a concrete industry have been doing it for years. Like it used to be a case where, on the utility side, you'd have to build all these brick chambers and things. Now everything comes precast because it's made in a factory and it's lifted in on site. So we have been doing it for a number of years. It's just, I suppose, MMC sounds like it's brand new and, people are nearly afraid to, investigate it. But hopefully conversations like this and programs will help educate people.
Well, look, I think you've done a great job of selling the courses that you offer at the National Construction and Training Centre in Mount Lucas, John. Of course, it is coming up to, all those lovely CAO deadlines and all of that. And I know for many households, that'll be a particularly stressful time of year. So it's a career in construction is certainly one worth considering, because whether it's as a bricklayer, a plasterer, an electrician, an architect, you're needed, and you always will be needed. It's certainly one of those jobs that will always be needed. So it will be by the sounds of it, at least in modern. I don't want to say it's a secure career, John, because we know there's no such thing as a career for life anymore, but definitely it's a skill for life that will always be needed. John Kelly of the National Construction and Training Centre in Mount Lucas, thank you very much for joining us. What is your website, John, for people who might want to find out more?
Yeah, so we're fairly active online on the social media channels. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all those. But if they log on to www.mountlucas.ie, they'll get all the information there.
John Kelly, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Aisling.
We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and we are joined once again by Caroline O'Doherty of the Irish Times. Caroline is, of course, the climate correspondent, and the climate conference COP30 has wrapped up in Brazil, Caroline, and it was nicknamed the Do Nothing COP. I know it had been hoped it would be the implementation COP. What exactly happened over the course of the weekend?
Well, they did something all right. They did a lot of arguing. It ran over, and COPs often run over as the final details on agreement are being teased out. This one kind of ran over time kind of substantially because there were no details to work out, really. Look, they did reach an agreement, and that's something, because there wasn't high hopes that anything major would come out of this COP. Everything's very awkward on a world stage, and trying to reach agreement against the backdrop of that is not easy. But the agreement is not a radical agreement. It doesn't move things forward very much at all, but I suppose it stops things from slipping backwards. So the agreement called the Global, and I'm going to mispronounce this, the Global Mutual, which is a Brazilian Portuguese name, a word for sort of collective agreement and collective action. It reaffirms that the countries who signed up to the original Climate Change Convention and the Paris Agreement 10 years ago, which was to speed up climate action, it reaffirmed that that's what they intend to do. It reaffirmed the science. It reaffirmed that they need to act. It reaffirmed that they need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And it reaffirmed, it did also say we need to move further and faster. That's the main thing, really. A couple of other things that were added in there. These are items that have been worked on over the years, including gender equality into climate action. Why is that important? Well, because there's a lot of money at stake for investing in countries and helping countries, and many countries, do not have gender equality. And also, we know from climate disasters, it tends to be women and children who are worst affected, because women tend to be in the house more, they tend to be the carers, they tend to have the small kitchen, gardens and so on, while men maybe are in the cities and a bit more protected. So that's all important. And they also agreed some wording on just transition, which is a similar idea, but it just means that when there are changes to be made, when there is land to be, vacated, or people to be resettled, or opportunities, good green, jobs and stuff, that it's equally kind of spread around. That if you're a coal miner and your country decides, right, we're going to be climate champions, we're closing all the coal mines, you're just not thrown on the scrap heap. There's something for you. So a couple of things there. Reaffirming as well our commitment to climate action. The things that weren't done, I suppose, is what stands out more, though.
Yeah, and fossil fuels not being part of that agreement, it is disappointing, it has to be said.
It is. The countries agreed 2 years ago that they would, quote, transition away from fossil fuels, unquote. Never really, worked out what exactly does that mean, transition away, and as we know, fossil fuel use is actually growing.
Yeah.
That's despite wind and solar growing, but energy demand is growing. World population is growing. We're using more gadgets. We're using huge amounts of data centers and AI technology. People are needing more air conditioning and refrigeration because of heat. So we're using more energy all the time. Also, countries where the middle class is growing, they want to have cars, they want to have gadgets, they want to have TVs, they want to develop. So they're using more energy, and most of that is still being met by more fossil fuels. So the transition away, there was an attempt first by Brazil, the host country, to say we got to have a roadmap that has, actual actions and deadlines and timelines and targets and so on, rather than just a phrase, transition away from fossil fuels. It didn't really go anywhere, except I am going to say there's a little bright spark in this. Colombia suddenly emerged as, well, we're going to drive this idea home. And then about almost 90 countries got behind that. And not the big fossil fuel producers, obviously, but Ireland got behind it and said, we really, this is nonsense. What we're doing is a nonsense, committing to climate action without addressing fossil fuels. It didn't get it into the final agreement, but Colombia is to hold now this big international conference next April. To find out, can we get momentum on this so that when we come to the next COP, we don't just have sort of 88 countries kind of saying, well, we're kind of vaguely in agreement with this, that we have an actual plan to put forward. That's interesting. I was thinking, with the COP, the slowest pace of climate change should be the pace of a COP. This is not hill walking. They always say in hill walking, you go at the pace of the slowest person in the group. When it comes to climate change, you need to forge ahead and go faster than the pack, because the pack will always be very slow. Whereas you might get real momentum, if a bunch of countries said, well, we're going to go for this, come with us. It doesn't mean you're breaking away from the climate convention, which involves everybody, but it just means you're maybe showing the way, and it maybe gives other countries a bit of confidence to say, well, okay, we'll do that too. So that's interesting.
Finally then, Caroline, I know when we last spoke, there was a possibility that because Ireland will hold the EU presidency next time around, we might have a, in inverted commas, Irish COP. Do we know where the next COP will be held? Has there been agreement on that?
There's agreement, and it's slightly bonkers. Okay, so physically will be in Turkey. It will be run by Australia. Okay, get your head around that. The two of the countries were fighting over it. So Turkey will host it. They'll provide all the facilities. But in terms of, leading the negotiations, producing texts, chairing talks and so on, that will be Australian diplomats. And that has been agreed. I find it slightly odd. It's also slightly difficult in that Australia wanted this because they wanted to involve Pacific Islands all around them in the process. Obviously Turkey doesn't have the same relationship with Pacific Islands, so Australia said they're going to have a pre-COP meeting somewhere in the Pacific. Not great in terms of getting world leaders together and carbon footprint and public perceptions and all of that. So it's an odd one. Ireland will have the EU presidency, so we will lead the EU negotiations. We'll be at the head of that. But no, it's not really an Irish COP anymore.
Well, Caroline, I'm sure when the time comes, you'll be keeping us up to date on that. Thank you so much for keeping us up to date on COP30 over the past couple of weeks, Caroline. And I do hope sometime soon you get a bit of downtime to get a rest after all of this hard work.
Appreciate your concern. Thank you.
Caroline O'Doherty, climate correspondent of the Irish Times. We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Now, you know that on the programme we love talking about second-hand clothing and trying to make our clothing be more sustainable, and that our dress sense is more unique and individual. Over the past number of years, Vision Ireland, Ireland's national sight loss agency, has been engaging in various projects to encourage young people to think about the repercussions of their actions and hopefully to make more sustainable and eco-friendly decisions, particularly in relation to their clothing. And that includes partnering with Junk Couture. Junk Couture, of course, is that wonderful competition. I took part in it myself as a teenager, where you make clothing out of recycled objects. Now, when I say clothing, I mean these are creations and sculptures, amazing pieces. So for their latest collaboration, Resparkled, the two brands appealed to past contestants to reimagine their designs and an accessory and turn it into a new ensemble. And second-hand fashion enthusiast Zoe Ryan went along to find out what the Midlands contestant for Resparkled created.
Tia Conair Down means peace on earth, and I wanted to shine light on the issues in the world and the turmoils. And I think it's something, as peace isn't something that we currently have in the earth, but I wanted to strive for it and make a bigger impact just through telling my story and through my design.
And for the Resparkled event, what accessory did you choose to add to your original design?
So I created a handbag, and I just thought, as my headpiece currently has a very big headpiece, I wanted to hold something in my hand and have a handbag as an accessory.
And is creating items out of sustainable pieces or sustainable fashion in general, is that something that you're passionate about and you plan on continuing on even after the competition and, as you say, maybe even further after your studies?
I'm very passionate about it. I've actually entered the competition 3 times with Junk Couture, and I've made 3 different dresses, one for breast cancer, one for sea life, and then this one now for peace on earth. So it's definitely something that I would like to use and do in the future and continue with my 3 dresses.
And you mentioned there are 3 kind of charities or organisations. Did they help? Did you collaborate with them, or was it a case of you were inspired by their work for the designs?
So I collaborated with Your Spar Ireland and Breast Cancer Research Institute to create Power Pink is my design's name. And they sent me all the products to make this dress, and I've spoken at different events at it, and I'm really trying to get that one out there as it has such a powerful story behind it.
Dare I ask what the materials are for that piece?
So they sent me t-shirts that they use in charity and all different materials and fabric, and I use pipe cleaners and string and loads of crepe paper in it as well.
And should we expect to see you as a future creative? Do you plan on pursuing fashion or design in some way in college after you're finishing school?
I definitely hope to pursue something in fashion. I'm not sure what yet, but I would definitely love to make more outfits and then especially get Power Pink out there into the world.
We are from Knockwear, Granard and Longford, and our design is sooner or later.
And where did you get the idea for your original design?
There was a woman in our local area that had a sterilising business for cases for Dodies, and her business went bust in the end, and she ended up donating all of her product that she had left, so Dodies and the cases, and she asked if we could put them to use, and we ended up using them for our Junk Couture. That's kind of where we got the original idea.
And what was the reason as to why you got involved with the project? Is it that you have this love for sustainability? Was it more that you were on the creative side, or it just seemed like a fun challenge?
I suppose our school is very well known for Junk Couture. So our school was one of the first to win the World Junk Couture. So it's always kind of been a big thing in our school, and it's great to get the opportunity to be involved in these sort of things. And especially when it's using products that haven't been used before, so Dodies have never been used before. So it was really, we saw the opportunity and we took it, and it's been a great experience to be involved in. So, yeah.
After the event, I caught up with sustainability advocate and founder of Reusey, Pat Kane, who was a judge at the event, about her involvement in the project.
I'm a board member at Vision Ireland Retail, and of course Vision Ireland being a partner of Junk Couture, they contacted me and said, look, would you like to be a judge for the finals? And And of course, I couldn't say no. It's such an important project enabling our young people out there to really express who they are through the power of fashion, but also through the power of sustainability, which is phenomenal. So making sure that whatever projects that they are creating are in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, being it, gender balance, or protecting the environment or whatever it is. So I just couldn't say no, and I think it's just a phenomenal initiative.
And as you said, this was an initiative in which Vision Ireland and Junkator come together, and that they were reaching out to past participants of Junkator to take a new stance and a new look on their designs and add something new to it. And as judges, you were tasked with looking through all the applications and deciding which would make it to the final. And 2 of those designs that were finalists were actually designs of Midlands-based students. So why did those particular designs stand out to you, that they fit the bill for this, or that they just stood out to you in some way that you said, yeah, these have to be finalists?
Yeah, I feel like, one of them obviously was put together with plastic bags that were rescued from a hospital. And they also used feathers, so leftover feathers that were used in art projects, to come together and represent our planet. And, the importance of really taking a hard look at what's going on out there when it comes to pollution, to plastics and whatnot. So that was phenomenal. And obviously a cause that's really close to our hearts. All the judges agreed. It was really, really interesting, a really great combination of different, I suppose, elements, and of course, great purpose behind it. And similarly enough, I suppose, on the other ones that they were using suitors, stoties, or whatever you call, to represent that, one, of course, looking into the whole pollution side of things and waste and whatnot, but also looking at the role of women in society and the importance of that gender balance that we hear so much, but we see maybe not so much action. So they were extremely creative projects. They were projects that really left us in not only because obviously the purpose and the I suppose the whole reason why behind both projects, but the work that went into each one of them and the detail. We were really impressed with the structures that were created. So they were very, very deserving, I suppose, nominees.
As part of the application process, the students who were reapplying to be considered for this had to give a design story. Now, looking at the 2 write-ups from the 2 designs that you spoke of there, they actually both focus on that theme of peace. So I suppose Junkator and obviously Resparkled, it's using a fun initiative. It's an initiative where students are challenged to go out there and to think and use their creativity, but it is for a wider cause, and it is for something more monumental like this. Both students have focused on the concept of peace. So as I said, I suppose Junkator, it's a fun way to get younger people thinking.
Yeah, no, that's the whole point. So Junkator could easily have been just an initiative that, let's create fun projects out of waste. And that's fine. However, they went one step further and they decided that to align each one of the projects with a sustainable development goal, which is nothing but, a framework that was put together by the UN back in 2015, where we look at the world through 17 different lenses. And it could be, as you said, world peace. It could be zero hunger. It could be, climate action, life below water, life on land. It could be anything like that. Gender equality. So to be able to, I suppose, marry creativity with purpose, it's fantastic. And it's a very fun way to teach the students, but not only them, but all of us, I suppose, witnessing their work, that a better world is possible, that there is plenty interest out there, and this new generation is coming with everything to try and help. So it is phenomenal.
And through your work on projects like this, and obviously the younger people that you encounter, what is your current feeling on your hopes, I suppose, for this? From what I have witnessed, I do think that the next generation, the younger generation that are coming up, they are more conscious than we or those who came before us have been. So do you see this positively? Do you think that they're really starting to listen now and that change will come because the attitudes of those that are coming up the ranks are different to ours?
Exactly. I feel like this generation has already seen the harms, caused by climate change, but not only climate change, inequalities from cost of living crisis all the way to gender balance at workplaces, So they are witnessing the full shebang. And I see what I see when I work with young people in schools or different workplaces and more companies is that they really want to be a part of the change. Young people are looking to work for companies that are aligned with their values. And that, I can't think of that back 20, 30 years ago when, you know, some of us were hitting the workplace for the first time. So we were working for whoever wanted to employ us. Right now, it's different. They're like, but what is it that you do? And how is it that you do what you're telling me that you do? You know, I want to know because I want to feel proud of that workplace that I'm going for. So I feel like this is a fantastic sign that they do want to support change. They're, and you know, learning and supporting businesses that are on the same wavelength.
But where did the idea come from? A question I posed to Megan Kelly of Junkator.
Yeah, I suppose we kicked off the partnership with Vision Ireland back in August, where we brought past designs to their pop-up at Electric Picnic. It was a brilliant success. And post this, we talked about different ways that we could continue to engage our community across the country. A natural fit became this idea of a Resparkle challenge. And what we did was we asked alumni to put forward their original Junkature design, but really respark it by making an accessory just to complement this, but while also maintaining the level of sustainability and circularity at the heart of the process. It was very much about creativity, innovation, and giving materials a second life. And what I found, Zoe, was that it really shone a light on the incredible emerging talent that we have from our programme. We were thrilled with the responses. The open call very much drew strong interest from students across the country, and the standard of submissions was incredibly high.
Absolutely, and it was evident from being at the event that the students, even though these were past designs that they still had that passion to further it and to think again as to how this could be brought into the new age, I suppose.
Well, I think it's one of those ones, Zoe, that it gives them an opportunity to kind of re-explore what they thought when they entered the competition and bring their own learnings, you know, today, in the present day, into something different.
Yeah, because obviously, as you said, it could have been some time since they created the original design. And as we know, the world is changing every day. There are new issues coming out. So it's great to ask them to challenge themselves and say, the issues that you originally raised in your first design, are they still relevant? Or has this evolved? Has it become something different?
Absolutely. And even to that point of being able to look and say, okay, well, I put focus on this specific theme for my original design, but now I strongly feel about something else that's current in the world and being able to tie the two together. Vision Ireland was our natural partner for this. You know, their network of charity shops is rooted in reuse, circular fashion, and very much giving everyday items a second purpose, values that sit perfectly alongside with what we stand for. And I suppose working together, we're able to connect our young designers with real conversations around sustainability, accessibility, and community impact. And I suppose being at the event last week and you've seen the judging panel of Aoife McNamara, Chippy Sweetman, Pat Kane, you know, it gets the young people into rooms with people that are actually delivering on, you know, in their own right as well. And I suppose being able to host the final at Chippy really brought together creativity, social responsibility, and fashion in very much an inspiring way. And I think like that's something that students really enjoy.
Yeah, well, I don't know about you, but from the event, what I took from it was when the judges spoke about their own experiences and how their path came to sustainability and more climate action, I felt so inspired. And from listening to them, it made me think about things differently. But then when the students got up to speak about their designs, I was just blown away by what I was hearing from such young voices. I definitely was not thinking that way when I was their age. So it's just evidence that time is changing and that people are learning at a younger age to be more conscious of the world around them.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. As you say, like you hear the students telling their stories, speaking so passionately and enthusiastically about their own themes and topics, you know, for their Junkature design. And I suppose like a big thing for us is that we don't want young people's Junkature journey just to end after the 1 year of participation. And through initiatives like Resparkled and getting into rooms with such acclaimed people, it's very much a way for us to champion their growth and keep them connected and really open new doors. I think everybody in that room, like yourself, like me, we've all taken away something that we can bring into our own day to day.
And that package was, of course, by Midlands 103's Zoe Ryan. We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow evening, the Offaly Climate and Biodiversity Action Group will be hosting a free climate cafe. That's taking place in Clara in the old bank building from 7:30 until 9. It is a space to have a chat about environmental issues. The group really wants to spark action across County Offaly, and the idea is just to get together, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, and see what, as individuals, people can come together and work together to do something positive for the environment. The Climate Cafe is in collaboration with Clara Tidy Towns and the Clara Heritage Society. So if it's something that you would like to attend or would like more information about, you're asked to email Offaly Climate and Bio. So Offaly Climate and Bio, B-I-O, at outlook.com. And the team at Offaly Climate and Biodiversity Action Group will be sure to give you all the details. That's again tomorrow evening at 7:30, Tuesday the 25th of November in the old bank building in Clara from 7:30 until 9. And of course, if you're involved in a community group across the Midlands and you're looking for people to get involved, well, let me know and I will give you a shout out here on Let's Go Green. You can get in contact with me in numerous ways. You can email me, hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie. That's hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Aisling O'Rourke CC. And of course, you can go to midlands103.com and contact the station directly there. Now, I know that many of you tune in each and every week from around the world, in fact, on our podcast, Let's Go Green with Aisling O'Rourke, on your preferred podcast app. Please do, if you're feeling generous and if you've been enjoying the show, hop on to that preferred podcast app now and give us a 5-star rating, maybe comment on a show, or even write us a review if you're on Apple Podcasts in particular. The more 5-star ratings, comments and reviews that we get, the more likely the old algorithm is to share the podcast with other potentially interested listeners. And you know yourself, in order to keep the show on the air, we need to keep you listening and keep you happy. And that's why I always say this show is driven by you, the listener. I'm always more than happy to discuss items that are of interest to you and, you know, give a pat on the back to people in the community doing their bit for environmental issues and climate adaptation and mitigation measures. It has been a busy show. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope you will consider, of course, as we go into the festive season, shopping locally and sustainably this season, and that perhaps that resparkled piece might have sparked some inspiration for you, or even our earlier piece on modern methods of construction might have sparked an entirely new career for you or a family member. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the show. We will be back same time next week with another edition of Let's Go Green. But in the meantime, have a great week. Stay safe, mind yourselves, and stay listening to Midlands 103.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.